Hey, welcome again to the podcast. You can probably see that things look a little bit different compared to how I normally record. That's why I'm jumping on here because this episode, I actually ran into some tech issues that I wasn't able to see before while I was recording. I uncovered that there was a weird hardware issue on my machine. But so what you're going to notice in the podcast here is that the audio and the video don't match, and there's a couple little garble spots. Um, but I decided to put this episode out anyway because it was just too good not to share. Things like this are always a great reminder to me that things aren't perfect, but we still should push through and produce and face our work and see what happens. Like I said, this episode was just way too good not to share. So go ahead and tune in. Please excuse or give me some grace for the mismatch on the audio and video, especially if you're watching on YouTube. Otherwise, if you catch this and you're just listening to audio, it shouldn't be too bad. But enjoy the episode. I appreciate you giving me some grace on this, and we'll have this fixed on future episodes. Appreciate you. Enjoy the episode, and I'll see you around. This podcast is something that I started many years ago, and it's one of my favorite things I get to do every few weeks. I'm really excited that I have my good friend Mark here. We're going to talk about entrepreneurship, building Facebook groups, and all the truth and maybe some of the lies that we hear about online. Welcome to the show, Mark. I'm really glad to have you here.
Hey, Gabe, there's no lies online. Everyone tells the truth all the time. No exaggerations. I've never seen it.
Well, thank God. I'm glad you straightened me out.
My rule of thumb with online, I always say, is I assume that a person's full of it until they prove me otherwise. And that's always served me well. I learned that early on.
Yeah, that's not bad advice, because especially on the online space, I mean, we've both been doing this for, it's disappointing how many people I've seen get ripped off or misled or just completely distracted with something that doesn't work. So yeah, that makes sense.
Or it's just, if there's people I know aren't doing anywhere close to seven figures unless they're counting the decimal point with the cents, afterwards. So they're making like $10,000 and 50 cents a year. Oh, they're seven figures. But no shame. They put it out there, and it's like, do they actually, maybe they're starting to believe this? Like, it's what was Steve Jobs' reality distortion field his employees said he had. I think some of them have that, where they think, hey, if I say it enough, I'll believe it. Other people believe it too, and it'll come true.
Probably like 5 or 6 years ago now, I got through a group. Can't remember what group it was. I met this guy, and he had this, great story, rags to riches and everything, and how he went from nothing to seven figures and blah, blah, blah. And then I finally uncovered he was based in another country, and I don't even remember what country it was right now, but the exchange rate was something like 10 to 1 or something. And I was like, oh, now I understand why you're a seven-figure coach. So that's pretty awesome. Yeah.
I saw a guy the other day on Instagram who ended up he's a master at finding things. If someone it will send him a video clip, you'll never be able to find me. Well, he starts like locating things in the background, and he does Google Earth, and he's like brilliant with finding these really obscure places. But he ended up exposing a guy who was, those creator houses where everybody like all goes into the house and creates content. And this guy, of course, had like the Lambo there, young guy who's like 20 years old, making multi-millions a year, whatever. And this guy that's a master finding things ended up exposing him. He worked at McDonald's. He was able to find out he wasn't even one of the people in the content house. He like got in through an invite, a friend of a friend or something in there. And he actually worked at McDonald's. But if you look at that video, if you were naive and not sure of the online space, you might think, oh my God, this guy's crushing it.
Yeah. On the bad end of the internet stories, I'll tell one more. I had a good friend of mine, Todd G, on the last podcast, the episode that came out, and he told me this, and then I looked into it. I can't believe it's true. It's so sad. He's like, there's people selling courses on how to edit your Stripe screenshots so that it looks like you make more money than you do.
My final point in this thing is it was very discouraging last summer when, do you remember when Threads became the big thing? Literally within like 2 or 3 days of the Threads thing, there were people releasing courses how to make 7 figures on Threads. And it's like, it just came out like
Oh
this
my
week.
God.
Come on, and that perfectly wrapped up what online social media is like. And well, that was 2023. 2024 hasn't gotten any better.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride. I know that human nature's always been human nature, so none of this stuff is surprising to me, but the challenging part of it is like the ease that people have of distributing misinformation is obviously a challenge.
Yeah, and what happens, I find, I don't know if you're finding this, especially the last few years, is there's a level of skepticism from consumers, which is a good thing overall, right? But
Yeah.
it's almost like if you're going into a relationship with a partner that's been like used and abused, but in the past by other partners, and then they're very skittish, and it's hard to build a good relationship that way. I've noticed that from calls with people and stuff too, where they're telling me, well, I spent 10 grand on this program. There was nothing but fluff and air. And then I got ripped off in this one or whatever. And you're almost having to fight against that and show, hey, I'm not like that. So I think overall skepticism is good. A more informed marketplace is a good thing, but it can make it more difficult to sell because then you're also afraid of, you got issues FTC, right? Like we have friends
Yeah.
who've probably been caught up with that. I know some people have gone through that and they're sharing their stories for the good of everyone. But yeah, it's a crazy online space.
Yeah. And it leads to really what I want to talk to you about, Mark, because I've known you for years, and we definitely connected on Facebook. I can't remember where we originally connected. Maybe you'll remember, but I've just seen the consistency and integrity that you show up with, and you say it how it is. You're super clear about what your programs are. Here's what you're getting. Here's what you have to do, and you've run your group, the Coaching Jungle, for a long time now. And it's like, I just admire and appreciate how you're no bullshit. You're always going to tell people what it's going to take to be successful. And it's so refreshing to be inside a space that's so consistent and been so consistent for years. Because I also watch, and I did this as a young entrepreneur, this isn't a judgment, but it's the reality of being able to observe where somebody is on their path. And that's like, I watch people switch offers like, every month or two, every week or two, or a few times a year. And I'm like, well, clearly you didn't know how to deliver the first offer, because if you're switching, then there was a problem. You either, didn't, especially the people that are selling new offers, and I can tell they are getting engagement or some sales out of it. If you're constantly switching, then you're not actually delivering value, because a real sophisticated, successful, long-term minded entrepreneur is going to find something that's principle based. They're going to sell it over and over, and they're going to perfect it for years. And it makes sense when I had a friend shut down a business that he ran for almost 10 years because his life was shifting and everything was shifting. Like, that is perfectly normal and acceptable on a healthy path. When people are switching gears so much, it's another indicator that there's a warning flag, right?
Yeah, like I'm not saying you stay married to a certain niche if you're not feeling it, or everybody evolves, right, or changes. But if you see someone who, 1 minute is a Threads expert we talked about, and maybe a few months ago they were a Clubhouse expert, and then it was
Yeah.
NFTs and everything else, it's like, oh wow, what's going on? Or school experts, that's the one of the big ones
That's the
nowadays.
new one.
Full disclosure for me, as we're recording it, I'm experimenting with a different type of offer this week, because one thing I've found the last few years in the online space, not saying high ticket can't sell, but I've had usually focus on high ticket offers, and it has gotten a little more challenging since after COVID died down and goes back to the real world. And there's a model I'm experimenting with now, which is a very low investment community type offer to get into my world. And then there's upper tiers with it. And, so it's tough because I get what you're saying. You don't want to be switching every day or every week and you're getting whiplash. I also like sometimes testing an offer, if it works, doesn't work, have to tweak it or whatever. So yeah, I get your point.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit, kind of like, what's your origin story of becoming an online entrepreneur? Because like, I know for some people that's a dream of. You and I have the luxury of being able to work from home or work from where we are, and we have that flexibility, but it doesn't happen overnight. It's not like launch a website and become a millionaire, like we said. But tell me a little bit about what your origin story is, kind of like how, when you realized you were an entrepreneur, and what led that, where that got you to today, to running the Facebook group and doing what you're doing.
So I think the seeds of entrepreneurship got into my head back in high school. I was in the bookstore and I was probably buying either a book around sports or politics, which were both my hobbies. And I was a big, still am a political nut. And I came across a book, Think and Grow Rich, which of course, I'm sure most of your audience have read and most people are familiar with, Napoleon Hill. And I thought, oh, that sounds interesting. And I absolutely love that book. I still love it to this day. That was in high school, and that got the wheels going around entrepreneurship. In university, I was taking my, yeah. Now, this isn't anything fancy, arts degree with a political science major. The political science factory down the street wasn't hiring. So, but no, when I was in university, I loved politics and things like that, but I really want to get into business for myself. And I ended up getting started and I got my real estate license while I was at university, the tail end of it. And actually, my mother wasn't too happy because I left my graduation ceremony to go show a house. So I got my diploma or degree and then bang, I'm out of there. And she said, where did you go? She couldn't get her pictures or whatever with it. So I got started in real estate right at, even before I left university, finished, and built up a real estate business over 10 years. Big team. We got up to about 100 people, a couple different sister companies under one roof, hockey stick growth every year, and then everything collapsed. And I'm kind of condensing the story because I'm sure people don't want to hear my life story year by year. But basically, I went through a period there, a couple of years where I was really struggling because, anyone who's had a business and goes through a business closure, not a fun time, right?
No.
And especially since I'd never experienced any stumbles as I was building that big business. And I kind of joke, but I was thinking that, oh, gee, this success thing's easy. Yeah, it was a ton of work. I was working 100 and some hours a week and just work. But I thought, wow, this is, by the time I'm 40, I'll have a private island. I'll have a couple jets and, like all this other stuff. And then bang, everything came collapsing down. And I was helped back to my feet by several different coaches and mentors. And I never had a coach before. That's probably the reason why the business closed. It would have helped to have a coach. So when I was getting back into business, I'm like, yeah, I really want to work for myself. I'm not employable and I'm not trying to turn my nose up for anyone who enjoys their job. If they're doing 9 to 5, corporate America, whatever, great. I don't think everyone should be an entrepreneur. It depends on personality, what your goals are and things. But I just am not employable. And I want to get back into business, but I'd already done real estate and gone through all that stuff. I said, been there, did it, done it. I need to do something different. And having a front row seat to work with coaches, I thought, gee, this would actually be fun to do this. And that's a really long story shortened, but it was back in 2014 that I got into the coaching world. And here we are now over a decade later.
That's crazy, man. And it sounds like you lost your business around when I did. I was in construction when the big real estate crash happened.
2009 was when, so everything in the States, what was it? 08 was a real bad year, probably a little bit sooner. So I'm in Canada, of course. And the saying that we have here is when America sneezes, Canada catches a cold. So it works its way up. And for me, it's, I wouldn't be talking with you today if that hadn't happened. But interesting experience. I don't wish it upon anyone. But I guess the key when you go, I'm sure you learned lessons with your stuff, but if you can pull the lessons from it, it stings a lot less, and then you take it and apply it to future things. And it's something that I used to back after it happened. It was, oh my God, I'll never recover from this. Life's over. Might as well just jump off a bridge somewhere. Now I can look back and it's like a wound that's healed over. So there's, maybe a scar, but I'm not thinking about it every day, with it. And it's cliche to say, when one door closes, another one opens, and what doesn't kill you only makes you stronger. But I think there's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah, for sure. I went bankrupt for $1 million and I say, well, that was my $1 million education. And it's one of the most valuable things I've ever been through. And I never want to repeat it. So
go big or go home. Well, but there's so many people that are making, $40K a year that are afraid to take that risk. But when you're on your deathbed looking back, it's easy to never have any stumbles if you never take any risks. And I have a soft spot for when I see in the media about business owners, entrepreneurs who are going through tough times. And I tend to, usually my default is to side with them because I also know that the media and society tends to paint them as the bad guy or the bad girl for going through business closure. That no one or very few people go into business expecting that the business is going to close or wanting it to close. And I just think entrepreneurs get crapped on way too much, like the amount of jobs, economic stuff that they provide, but they don't get the level of appreciation or support that they should for that. Entrepreneurs make the world go around.
I totally agree. Not everybody should be an entrepreneur. Thank God we're not all entrepreneurs. That would be a very different world. But yeah, it's like I can even look back at my business closing, and there was 3 or 4 businesses that started out of that, and there was still some good things. It's the level of risk we take and the criticism you take, and there's so much hardship to go through as an entrepreneur. But I know there's no other path for me, so it's like I have a little bit better skills, and experience to walk through the challenging times now.
Yeah, if I ever, not that I'm going to come out with a diet product, but when I was going through that period when everything closed and the time immediately after, I didn't even realize. I'm the type that some people eat when they're stressed. I'm probably the opposite, right? I wasn't even thinking of food. So my wife, I'm my ex-wife now, but she said to me, when did you eat last? It was Sunday night. And I'm like, I said, Wednesday morning? And she's like, oh my God. And I'd lost in a very short period of time, like 30 pounds or something like that. I'm not a big, now I wish I could, I would like to lose 10 or so, 15, but especially back then, I wasn't in a position to be losing 30 some pounds. And I could literally pull my pants down with the belt tightened to the most. So I was like, holy geez. So I always say that's a perfect diet. You have to build like a 7-figure business, employ a lot of people, go through a messy business closure, get the media and strangers, everyone to attack you, death threats and everything. Guaranteed you're going to lose weight, but I don't know what kind of market you would have for that.
Only us crazy entrepreneurs would sign up for that one.
It's not fun, but it's also interesting when you go through a business closure, you see who your real friends are and who was probably just on the gravy train to get something from it. And actually, a good friend, someone who's been a mentor for me as well, I had no clue who he was. He reached out when this was all going on back in 2009. He read it in the newspaper because back when even a little bit more people read the newspaper. Nowadays, I don't know if anyone does. And he reached out. I had no clue. He lived about an hour away from me. And he said, hey, you don't know me, read about your story. He said, paraphrasing, just want to say congrats on going for it. You did a lot there. I'm sorry it didn't work out. Would love to meet with you for coffee sometime. And I said, I'm not a coffee drinker. I'm the rare Canadian that hates coffee and beer. I'm going to lose my citizenship. But I said, if we want to meet up, I'll have a hot chocolate or whatever I'll find. I ended up going out of town to meet him an hour away. I wasn't in a sociable mood because when you're going through this, you're not really feeling like a social butterfly. But I just said, oh, what the heck, I'll go meet him. And it was a great conversation. It really got my head turned around because he started telling me about local people, super successful people who had gone through something similar, which I had no clue, like years earlier. And then he told me about his own stumbles and everything else. And I thought, you know what? I'm not the only one going through this. When you're going through a business closure like that, you think you're the only one, and you feel like you have a scarlet letter that's on you all the time. And I thought, wow, I'm very grateful that he reached out. I thought that took a lot, but also that I ended up going to meet with him.
That's huge, man. Yeah, you're right. That was the hardest part of me of losing the business, was not lost the money, lost the business, lost a lot of reputation and had death threats and the whole 9 yards and lots of bad press. But I lost almost everybody in my community, and I even had family, turn their back on me for a while. That was really, really hard. So what an amazing gift that friend gave you. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah, well, it's funny. So you and I both probably used the term fake news years before Trump did. So we should try to, sue him or get royalties for fake news. I was really, and by the way, I'm not perfect. I made a lot of mistakes there, and I'm not trying to say I'm a saint, but I saw an awful lot of stuff in the media that was incorrect. And I'm reading, I'm like, how could they just run with this? Yeah, I lost a lot of respect for the media that hasn't recovered. I tend to be very skeptical when it comes to media. And it goes back to what we talked about when you see, especially a local business owner closing and stuff, where you'll see a lot of stories from the employees or the creditors, the vendors, all that stuff. But people forget that there's a life that started that business, that took a lot of risks, and had a lot of sleepless nights to employ a lot of people. And they deserve, if not credit, a lot less crap that's being thrown at them when something like that happens.
I really appreciate that you're sharing that, Mark. It's like, I've definitely I haven't really focused on just really deepening my empathy for people across the board, because it's so easy to judge from some snippet we see that is never the whole story, whether it's well-intentioned content or not. It's never the whole story. And it's rarely well-intentioned content at that level, but it's like, I just realized like I really believe everybody is, the vast majority of people you're going to meet are doing the best they can.
Yeah.
Even back to the people we talked about in the beginning who are selling something obviously scammy that we understand, like at the root of that, they're trying to do good for their life, or they're trying to figure it out. And so it's not that I won't call out the things that I think are incorrect and foolish and wrong, but it's from a different place, because we're all trying to figure it out. We're all trying to make a business. We're all trying to provide for ourselves, for our families. And like, when I come into a situation or a conversation, or even just observing something from that perspective, I feel a lot better about how I'm showing up.
Well, the online space, I've always said it's like a playground with kids, like kids in adult bodies, when you've got them all like, quote, spilling the tea, and they're all like hyenas jumping on someone, they're sharing screenshots and they're attacking. And I'm thinking, like, is this doing anything to move your business forward? You're Schadenfreude, you're, getting off on someone's, stumbles or challenges or whatever. And I think there's a lot of that online that's, it's supposed to be a professional type place, and it's not always the amount of time. One thing I am grateful for, when I was going through my business closure, social media wasn't as everywhere like it is now, but it was still 2009. And one thing I made a point of was I wasn't going to react, whether it came to crappy emails being sent to me or anything like that. I'm not going to get triggered and start posting on Facebook. And I think at the end of the day, it's like that saying, about when you drink poison, hope the other guy dies and stuff like that. A lot of people are like that. They spend so much time focusing on other people, and they're really just hurting themselves.
Yeah, definitely. So was it in 2014 that you ended up opening the Facebook group?
Yeah.
Or was that when it started?
The Facebook group opened in 2015, the Coaching Jungle. So the very long story short, again, was I started online with coaching in 2014, and I had a podcast, or still have a podcast, Natural Born Coaches, but I had a group for podcast guests, people who are on the show. So my podcast for the first year was a daily podcast. We got up to 350 some episodes really quickly in that first year. And so we had a few hundred people in the Facebook group. And the Facebook group had a very unique name, mind blowing. It was Natural Born Coaches Past Guests. So, I took a lot of time coming up with that. So what was happening was I had a lot of people who hadn't been on the show, just must have seen coaches in that title, and they were putting in requests to join. So after enough of those, where I'd send over a standard reply like, hey, Mary, I saw that you requested to join my Facebook group, the Natural Born Coaches Past Guest group. Unfortunately, that's only for people who've been guests on my show. Have a nice life, basically. And after enough of those happened, I thought, I really should have a group that's open to more than just the past guests, and open to any coach or aspiring coach, or maybe it's someone who works with coaches. So I ended up saying to the people who were in that Facebook group, hey guys, I'm opening up a new group and you're welcome to come over there. Would love to have it. It's called the Coaching Jungle, and here's the link. And we got off to a really good start, because we had our first few hundred people right there. And then with other ones, like we got up to 1,000 really quickly. And now we're up almost to 26,000. But that's how it got started. That was in the fall of 2015 for the Jungle.
That's awesome. And it feels like I've been in so many groups over the years. I'm less active. I'm in your group. I'm in a couple groups now, but the groups have gone through these huge spikes in popularity, and Facebook shows them in the feed and promotes them, and then they kill them. But I've really noticed that you've managed to really curate a group, because I've seen plenty of people just focus on numbers, which is not who you are, I know, and grow these huge groups, but then they just fall apart because there's no intention in curating who's in there. So what's been your methodology of like who you let in, how you've grown the group? Because I've seen it just grow steadily, and it's a real community, which is cool.
Yeah, so there's a couple things there. First off, it starts with the criteria. So we have very clear rules for who we accept and don't accept. So the ones we don't accept, if they don't have a profile picture, they're not getting in. If they have been new on Facebook, under 30 days old for the account age, we don't accept that. If they're a member of too many groups, over 500 is our cutoff. And I'm sure you've seen this, seen people members of like 1,844 groups. I'm like, clearly, I think there's something going on there. It's hard to keep track of those. Some of the other criteria is if their personal profile is locked down, their wall don't accept those. Not saying that everyone who locks their profile are bad. Maybe they're going through some stuff, but they could also, we're looking for weird stuff on their wall, basically. And what kind of person is this? It doesn't have to necessarily be a coach, because it could be someone who's interested in coaching, but we want to make sure it's a real person. So no fan pages. And the other one, which is harder to put into a definition, I shot a loom for my team recently. It's no douchepreneurs. So there's a certain type of person that tries to join the group, and they must have a factory churning them out, but they're always usually in their 20s, and their banner has like the fancy watch and the steering wheel of the luxury car. All their posts on their wall is all with cars, jets, women, stuff like that. And when you look at the photos section of their personal profile, same thing. And we just block those or don't accept those right away, because, clearly they're selling something I don't want them selling in there. And then the other one we don't let in is sometimes we'll have a run on the group from a certain organization. So we don't notice it at first, but we'll get... I won't use any real names, but we'll say we get requests from ABC Media Group or something. Okay, well, that's fine. We let them in. But then if we see like 10 from ABC people works at ABC Media Group in like 2 days, there's something going on there, right? So once we learn that, we have a blacklist of certain organizations we don't let in. So that's the criteria. Then the other reason I think the group's done well is I've been extremely tight when it comes to moderation and enforcing group rules. And it's not that I don't want people posting in the group and only my posts. Like, I want people to be actively posting, and it's not just a Mark show. But we have rules around, promotion, no links, things like that. Now, we do have a VIP program, which started recently. You're a Jungle VIP, so you pay for that perk and you get to put a promo post up on the wall once a week. And great people are in there, but we don't allow certain things. So we're very tight on deleting that. True story. It's been 5 years since this has happened. About half an hour before I hopped on this call, I popped into the group just checking on something, and somebody had posted a porn video. So, that doesn't happen often. Usually the rule breakers are like promotional type stuff. It's not a woman getting plowed by a guy. I obviously deleted and booted that guy. Stuff like that's going to happen, but it's very rare for a group of 25, 26,000. It's been years since we got someone trying to put porn on the wall. But sometimes you do get weird stuff like animal cruelty videos or some sort of political propaganda or whatever. But we've been very tight on it. And I think that people appreciate that, because I've had group members tell me, Mark, thank you for taking care of this. Or another one, if people are using the group as a directory to send cold DMs, if you got a message from someone, hey, Gabe, I see that you're in the coaching jungle as well. Oh, by the way, and then they just start selling you. If you told me about that, we would just boot the person, because that's one of our group rules is no cold DMs, no phishing post. If you put a post up and then you're just messaging, unless it's a VIP, again, like yourself, they get a pass there. But for others, we don't allow that. So
if I remember right, like anybody you've approved as a member can post, and then you and your team are moderating everything, right? It's not, and I'm sure you put people on probation or not, but it's not like every post has to be approved by you guys.
No. I've thought about it, but if you weren't a VIP, let's say you're Joe Smith and you put a post up and then you had to wait hours to see it up on the wall, I think that would hurt the engagement and the activity in the group. Most people are good. Knock on wood, for that size group, we have very few problems in it. We don't have all posts pending approval. Now, someone breaks a rule in the group, unless it's someone like the guy that posted the porn clip, obviously there we're not going to put on post approval. We just booted them. But if someone breaks a rule, they're probably in a lot of groups and maybe they just didn't take time to read the rules or whatever. So we will delete the post, and then you have the opportunity to, of course, give the feedback why it was deleted. You check off which rule they broke. If they break it a second time and we look in pending posts are in there again, they didn't take a hint the first time. Now, I'm a little bit flexible. If I've known someone for years, like sometimes if someone's been on my podcast years ago and they inadvertently broke a rule another time, I'm not going to be like, get the hell out or whatever. I'll send them a message and let them know. But I can't get over how many people, it's a really stupid way to do business. They join a group, They don't bother to read the group rules, and they start vomiting on the wall, just promotion type stuff. And then they're just joining all these groups. And I think, wouldn't it be better use of your time to join fewer groups, but actually give value in the group instead of just spamming and trying to, and that, I know they're not patient enough to do it, but there's people in the coaching jungle, and they often feel kind of sheepish when they tell me. They'll be like, Mark, I get quite a few clients from your group, or I just got a client last week from the jungle. And I'm like, great, because you do it the right way. You put good posts on the wall, you don't break the rules. Or I see them answering in the comments. Like one of our, and I can say his name because I'm sure he wouldn't mind, but Mike McMahon is someone who's been in the jungle for years. And Mike told me he gets business from the group. And the way that he does it is he just sincerely answers questions, looks at the comments, answers, gives as much value as possible. And what happens is people will then reach out to him like, hey, thanks for answering my question in the coaching jungle. Can we talk a bit more about it? And then they end up hiring him. And I said, hey, that's great, Mike. You're getting compensated. Yeah. You're doing good for the group. If it was just me and that's it in there, I'm not everyone's cup of tea, and I can't be in there 24/7. I want good people being active in the group.
Yeah, no, I've seen all that too over the years. I used to run a couple of groups. I used to be in a lot of big groups, and it's not that hard to get great clients if you just show up from that relational perspective of, oh, here's somebody having a problem. I'll write a really detailed answer, and maybe that person will read it and maybe they won't, but everybody else in the group has a chance to read it. And intuitively, especially when you're consistent like that and you keep showing up, people know, yeah, this person actually knows what they're talking about, and they're not trying to sell me in every comment, or they're not showing up in a weird way. And so it's that relational foundation that is how you get the best clients. Because even if you allowed, which I'm so glad you don't, like people just to promote in there, eventually it just becomes noise and nobody trusts you, and you just start to look like all the scammers we talked about in the beginning of the podcast here.
Yeah. So the problem with most or a lot of marketers online is they act like a horny teenager on prom night. They want to get into their date's pants, and they don't want to do the work leading up to that. And they're just going for that sale right away. And they're just very impatient. And it's really a long game. It's why when I'm promoting stuff, I don't want to make it sound like this is super easy. You do this, and in a week you're going to be making six figures, no problem. Like I'm an optimist by saying I'm a realistic optimist, because it takes time with anything that you're doing. First off, if you're planting the seed, you're watering it, it has to grow. The online space, most people don't operate that way. And I don't want to attract them into my world, because if they invest in my programs and then they don't make $1 million in a week, then they're suddenly problem clients. So I'd rather people, I like optimistic people with big goals, but people who understand you have to roll up your sleeves and work for it.
Yeah. And even for the people that do pull off some weird psychology or get, go in aggressively and promote something, or even, any channel they're using to promote and sell. Problem is, like, they don't have a relationship, and so when there's any hiccup in the account or any of the delivery, then people want a refund or they want to back out because there's no trust from the beginning. Whereas, like, I hired in a friend of mine to work on a project in the company in July, and we both started, and I said like, tentatively, I think this is a 90-day project. I don't know the outcome, you don't know the outcome, so here's like just a really simple agreement we wrote up. And then I said, let's evaluate every couple of weeks and see what's working. We had a really great conversation last night, and I said, I'm feeling like we're not hitting the goals, but it's really important to me to honor the agreement, because like, I know this is how you provide for your family. And we have such a good relationship that this woman I was working with came back and she's like, I don't feel good about where we're going either. Like, we both tried hard. I love working with you, Gabe, but the project isn't working. And we both agreed to change our agreement. I would never be able to do that if she had come in and hard sell me on, I can do X, Y, Z, and it's going to cost you all this money. It's such a better way to do business with that long view. You're right. There's so many sales techniques that work, but then there's so many of those fast action things that you end up just having such high churn. You're not ahead. You've burned a relationship. You don't have enough trust established for the person to recommend you. Whereas like this project I did with this gal, I'll recommend her to anybody that does her skill set. I take ownership of what happened in the project because it was kind of an experiment, which I told in the beginning. I didn't know if my idea was worth working on.
Yeah.
But the way she showed up and the relationship we have, like, she'll get referrals from me all day long, even though technically we didn't hit the target that I set. And that's the kind of bad project I want to have with a client, where it's like, we're totally transparent. We're clear what we're hitting. If it's something new that hasn't been done in their business or something brand new that we haven't done as a company, I'm super upfront about that. And I'll either offer, if it's something really new, I'll offer a real money back guarantee, because I'm like, I don't know. And so I don't want there to be any more risk than some of your time. Or like, the more transparent we are with people and the more we have a relationship, you will win even if you don't hit the actual project objective. And it's refreshing to see, again, that you operate that way, and that you also are setting the example for all the coaches in your community of like, this is how you show up consistently. This is how you sell. I love that you offer entry level stuff that can help the really brand new beginner get their feet under them, and not tell them, oh, you need to spend $10K up front with me to even start anything, or whatever that is. And then you do have the graduation, because at higher levels, we do need higher level support. We do need more things. And it makes sense to invest when you've proved out that you do want to be a coach, that you do have a business model worth investing in.
Well, what I hate with the coaching world is when it becomes normalized for these big ticket things like $10,000, $20,000. You're on a call with someone that you just meet, and I've been on the other side of the fence. They're trying to sell me on some service, and I don't commit right then because $20,000. We're not talking about $10, right? But then they start with I only work with action takers, and do you believe in yourself and all this other stuff? And I'm like, come on, like let's put it into perspective. In the real world, $20,000 is a lot of money. I feel like the problem with online business is that people tend to not look at the other person like humans because they're a face on a screen or a name or whatever. They're a little profile pic on whichever social media platform it is. And what you mentioned with the partner that you were working with on that is, crazy concept. You treated each other like humans and you were transparent. I recently experienced this. I do joint ventures, as you know, and I pay referrals for joint ventures. If you, I will gladly pay them all day long. If you connect me with someone, silver platter, they're great. I don't have to vet them because you're, saying they're great. I'd gladly pay referrals. And I had a call with someone who is a new joint venture partner. We're starting ours next week. And I just said to him, hey, by the way, I just want to get, because we are connected by a good friend of mine who I've done a lot of business with. I said, I want to give you a heads up that I pay referrals 10%. So he's, his name is going to be getting a referral on this. And I just wanted to let you know. And he's like, great. He goes, I love that person. Not literally, but he thinks he's great. Right. He said, I love him and I'm glad he's making some money from this. I said, great. I said, I just want to, put it out there. So it's all about just treating people like they're humans, being transparent. That goes a long way.
Absolutely. That's why this year, and I took a pause on the podcast early in the year, like over the holidays last year, because I had a lot going on in the business and personal stuff. I was thinking about I've had the podcast, I think, since 2017, and we're somewhere in the 150 number episodes. And I was like, who can I bring onto the show that I know that years from today will still be valuable to my audience? Because we re-promote the shows and I see somebody shared something, or I see it going out again, or somebody noticed it. And that's what I admired about who you are and how you operate, is that you really do treat people like humans. You operate from principles, and everything we've talked about today will be applicable in 10 years and 20 years. And if our kids, I know you got a son, I got a son, I think they're somewhat similar ages, they could go back and go, man, look at our dads, we're recording the show and I could apply this to my business. If they're not like I was in my 20s and know everything about everything. But that's the kind of things that I love sharing here. So I just really appreciate you sharing your story. Yours is a community that I always recommend to coaches, because I know they're going to get honest answers from you. The stuff you post, the JVs you bring in, are always aligned to, again, human to human experiences and just treating people well. And so it's been a lot of fun to catch up with you. But before we close out, I wanted you to talk a little bit about, you touched on it, the Jungle VIP program, and also if you have other stuff that you're still doing, because I know you have your coaching newsletter, which I think is a physical newsletter. I don't remember. You have a lot of different things that I really think support coaches well. And I'd love for you just to take a few minutes and share those things that you do to serve coaches.
Yeah. So thanks for having me. The central hub is naturalborncoaches.com. So you can find out everything I'm up to there. The Coaching Jungle VIP, hey, this goes back to the transparent thing, is from speaking with you before we started recording. I said I would love to share that because I think it's a great program for peanuts to get your offers in front of 25,000 plus people. And then there's other perks like networking with other VIPs and so on. The transparent part is everyone, I said I'd set Gabe up with an affiliate link. So you'll be able to buy that cottage on the water, sports cars, everything else, with people coming over. Not enough to retire on, but it's a thank you to Gabe for doing this show, guys. So if people want to check it out, we're going to set up a forwarding link, but it's going to be naturalborncoaches.com. jungle.com/Gabe, GABE. And then you could check out the Jungle VIP. It's just $97 a month, $9.97 a year. So you can save some that way. And one client, depending on what you're charging for your service, your offer, so on, would pay for many years of that. And obviously, I hope you get more than one client. So it's a great program, naturalborncoaches.com/Gabe for the Jungle VIP.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it, Mark. We'll have you back on again in the next year or so and see what's new in the jungle, but keep doing what you're doing and spreading the good word and teaching people what real business is about. I appreciate you, brother.
Thank you.